Yeah, my Christmas bonus. How silly of me. This'll be the best Christmas yet.
It's probably sometime around Christmas Day if I've managed to get this finished in time. So Merry Christmas. It's supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year. I thoroughly enjoy winter weather, as I've talked about before. This year's been a bit odd temperature-wise in Britain, with some really humid nights, and obviously an unexplained illness is sweeping through the country again, but nonetheless it's Christmas, which I guess vaguely fits into the point of this video. Sometimes, perhaps often, Christmas is not the most wonderful time of the year. Sometimes it's the worst, and that's okay. I want to talk about The Simpsons, a show I absolutely adore, willfully ignoring its descent to the point of shorts on Disney Plus where Lisa holds a smartphone and sings about how great Disney is. In its heyday, Simpsons was the pinnacle, and I wanted to go back to its clunky yet very heartfelt beginnings with the first episode, Simpsons roasting on an open fire. Because it's a Christmas episode, because it's Christmas time, because it's something worth talking about. Maybe not to the usual level of my in-depth analysis, but there's a lot of important ideas to draw out of this. The thing I think made The Simpsons so popular in its conception, and really is part of the big appeal of any family sitcom, is the idea of an imperfect family, where we can relate their struggles and mishaps to our own families, laughing at theirs, and so consequently getting to laugh at ourselves with some affection. Trying to put up lights but being angered by how tangled they get in the box, then discovering they don't work, where your naturally perfect neighbours naturally create a masterpiece with theirs.
What a big show-off.
Children who wishfully ask for presents you can't possibly provide for them.
A pony? Oh, Lisa.
The extended family you can barely manage to stay civil with. These are typical things we not just relate to, but that hopefully provide a more exaggerated example of our own family flaws, where we can laugh and feel relaxed in the idea that at least we're not as bad as them. Which as a concept is fairly mild in this first episode, but does get stretched further as Homer becomes an idiot who goes to space, or whatever else exaggerations happen. I suppose it got exaggerated well, more so because cartoons provide more space to exaggerate, until they stretched it a little too far and the cartoonish yet still human characters became cartoonish without their humanity. That's a tangent though. I don't think this episode is alone in this classic comedy depiction of Christmas. An imperfect family attempting to prepare for and develop a perfect day, only the inevitable struggles of life ruin that attempt, but in something much simpler they achieve a good Christmas. In the example here, Marge has to spend all her Christmas savings on laser removal of a tattoo Bart gets, while Mr. Burns cuts the Christmas bonus for Homer, and after several attempts they end up adopting an abandoned greyhound. He couldn't afford to buy everyone presents, but the dog Santa's little helper gives them all something much more rewarding.
Oh, this is the best gift of all, Homer.
Which I know I said in my Clifford video I do have issues about romanticising the idea of buying pets on a whim without preparing or being sure you can commit to it, but that's just not the point here. The point is this idea of a perfect Christmas that we're meant to expect and hope for every year. Where each year kids hope,
this is going to be the best Christmas ever.
You bet.
And for those of us who are lucky, that's true in our younger years. Christmas is a delight. We get presents we wanted, a fun day with our family, then I guess slowly lose some of the spirit as we get older and experience some years where there are ordinary disappointments. Things you know you probably shouldn't be disappointed about, but just naturally don't live up to your excitement. There was a year I asked for some sort of PlayStation game as a kid, and my dad bought it, but for the Xbox, which I didn't own and therefore couldn't play it. I can vividly remember trying to hide my disappointment, not wanting to tell him anything was wrong. We just learn in general with life that perfection doesn't really happen. We mature, things are often good enough rather than perfect, and that's fine. And yet there is this big pressure around Christmas about a perfect day, isn't there? And that's if we're lucky. For a lot of us, Christmases aren't good enough, I suppose, or if they are, it still comes alongside fallouts, arguments, Homer perhaps not managing to be civil with Patty and Selma. When he's out late trying to get a Christmas tree he can afford, them trashing him.
What, Aunt Patty?
No, nothing, dear. I'm just trashing your father.
Perhaps money struggles mean you end up with a stack of paper for a present, or a chew toy for your baby.
It says it for dogs, but she can't read.
Everything is going wrong for the Simpson family. Even when Homer works extra as a Santa in a mall to try and scrimp some more money, all he gets is $13.
$120 gross. Less Social Security, less
Yeah.
unemployment insurance,
But
less Santa training,
Santa
less
training?
costume purchase,
Wait a
less
minute.
beard rental, less Christmas
But-
club.
He decides, on Barney's advice, to head down to the racetrack and place a bet. An idea he's unsure about, but that Bart encourages him.
This can be the miracle that saves the Simpsons Christmas. If TV has taught me anything, it's that miracles always happen to poor kids at Christmas.
Which I guess is the point, really. We laugh at the joke because we understand, whilst it is true here in TV, it's not in reality. Miracles don't happen at Christmas unless we're incredibly lucky. Sometimes nothing saves Christmas. And I realise I'm not making any great, insightful point. I just felt, for once, in contrast to last year where I talked about BBC's A Christmas Carol and how it taught me to understand the festival in a way I never had, this year I'll talk about how bad Christmas can be. That it's often frustrating when films and TV, with the good intentions of giving us something heartwarming, also spread an idea that we're meant to be seeking perfection, and that if we can't get it, Christmas is cancelled, ruined. We need something to save us from this abysmal fate that is basically okay. Why is it, for example, we expect every Christmas we can put a bunch of distant relatives who don't much like each other into the same room for several days and expect them to somehow get along fine because it's a cosy wintry time of year? It's a very high expectation. Hopefully we keep it civil, but we still have to endure Grandad pressing his racist opinions, or Aunt making snide remarks, and maybe some of our young cousins getting into fights or something. It can be very stressful, and that's okay. Hopefully you get through it and find you love your Grandad in spite of his opinions. Maybe love him even if you don't like him. Or maybe not. We don't have to have the perfect rosy day where, despite our differences, we remember how much we love each other, because some of us grow up in households that are incredibly painful. I think the pain gets amplified on Christmas when we think of all the perfect images the day is supposed to be and contrast that to ourselves. The same way being single tends to feel twice as lonely on Valentine's Day simply because we feel like we failed at the tradition. And that's not good. It's sad. It hurts. I was doing some shopping in town with my girlfriend the other day, and we heard this mum shouting at her children for picking up toys in the shop or something. And when we were queuing to pay, they were in front of us, and she was saying to them, "I can't wait to send you off to your aunt's this weekend. I'm sick of you." She threatens to be in all their presents, and it was painful to see the shock on their kids' faces, believing her as she told them, "You don't deserve Christmas." It's sad to see. I guess it's part of the reason I'm a counsellor, but I also know it happens with God knows how many families. A kid being told they don't deserve Christmas. So yeah, I know that's not the sort of insight a lot of you come to expect from my channel, but sometimes Christmas is shit. That's sad, but it's also okay. It's probably a lot more common than the rosy world of TV leads us to believe. Hopefully we grow up to have our own Christmases someday, ones we prefer. Maybe not every year, maybe they're never perfect, but hopefully some are good enough, and we can cherish that. It's a hard stress on Homer in this episode. His Christmas bonus gets cut at the last moment. Marge, expecting he'll get one, spends all the savings on a laser surgery, and he's left with the stress of how do I get money for presents. It's a much smaller point, but I can remember that Christmas Day when my dad had accidentally bought me the Xbox game when he did figure out he'd got the wrong thing. I remember hearing him upset in the other room, being comforted by my mum because he'd ruined Christmas. He'd tried his best around a demanding job to give me and my brother that best Christmas yet, and he'd got it wrong, or so he felt. At the time I was too young to really understand why he was so upset, the way it's always a bit confusing for a kid to see their parents cry, but it makes sense now. He just wanted to be a good dad and show us he loved us. It's a cultural expectation that good dads give their kids presents they want at Christmas, and if it failed to do that properly, he wasn't a good dad. He hadn't provided. Christmas was somehow ruined. Homer feels too ashamed to tell Marge about the predicament, when she probably could have helped either find a solution or reassure him that it's okay. An imperfect Christmas doesn't mean it's cancelled. Obviously, confiding in her would be the better idea, but we understand how shame prevents him. He feels shame seeing his lights fail, seeing his kids marvel at Flanders lights as though he were an example of how a dad should be.
Bloody hell you doing?
And working as a Santa in the mall, he feels degraded in a way he shouldn't have to feel. He fears what his kids would think of him, kids he wants to be proud of him, so it's quite a touching moment when Bart finds out and tells him.
You must really love us to sink so low.
I don't think it is sinking low at all, but it's a reminder that what really matters to kids deep down is that their family cares about them. From an adult perspective, it is easy to forget that, desperately trying to create that magical Christmas for our children, save them some of those natural and inevitable little disappointments that seep in and that we need to learn from. We forget, even if they are excited to get ponies for Christmas, and even if they have to experience some letdowns, the fact we care is always what matters most. Nonetheless, fear of letting his kids down, being someone they're not proud of, failing as a dad, as a husband, proving right all that Patty and Selma criticise and trash him for, it leads him down a desperate path for Christmas, betting that last $13 he has on a Greyhounds that comes in last. A lot of adults hate Christmas, and it's not because they're Scrooges or have no cheer, it's because the holiday terrifies them. How am I going to keep a family together through all the inevitable fighting? How am I going to scrape enough money together for something perfect? The stress of it kills off their excitement year after year, but if you mention not liking Christmas, you're seen as grumpy. And that's sad too. And so is the idea of being alone at Christmas. When surrounded by so many family-based stories about Christmas, the idea of being alone also ends up being seen like some sort of failure or sin to feel shame over, even though it isn't. And maybe this video has just been a list of Christmas-related things that are sad, so maybe I should end on a different note. Christmas is a wonderful time, even with all the stress and fear and sometimes loneliness. It's hard to say why exactly, but I think it's because it symbolises hope. I think I probably made a similar point in my A Christmas Carol video, but that during the darkest, coldest part of the year, people have traditionally had something to feel excited about. And sure, it rarely is, if ever, as good a day as we hope. It's normally over very quick, and you're left with a ton of dishes to clean and wrapping paper to recycle, but I don't think the end product is the point. Just having excitement at all. Being able to hope for magic, as children do. Maybe some years they're naive enough to believe it. They don't feel cheated when they grow up to discover it's not so magic after all. They're just left with a warm, half nostalgic feeling about a wonderful time of year. I don't think we should have to feel shame or failure if Christmas isn't perfect. Hopefully we can just cherish the excitement and that idea of magic in and of itself. Disappointment doesn't outweigh the hope that came before it, even if it can feel that way. And I guess people do need things to be excited about this year. Passion in general normally is a bit of a trick, half built on humanity's capacity to dream, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's a magic in and of itself. That even when things aren't great in the world, some tacky music we're all bored of hearing, some dodgy lights, mince pies, gifts covered in wrapping paper that's technically pointless, and a Christmas pudding that I'm sure no one on earth really finds that tasty. How things as simple as that can evoke such powerful excitement in people, that's just kind of cool. I don't know, that's as far as this video goes anyway, so let me know what you think about Christmas. Sorry this wasn't more of an analysis video. I'd like to do something proper on The Simpsons someday, but like it if you liked it, subscribe, support me on Patreon if you fancy, but otherwise, have a Merry Christmas, everyone. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Devin, Kestrel, Arwin, Janice McMahon, Luke Hoare, Treachu Kiebler, Michael Gallagher, InSquares, Dustin Paulson, Samara Salsi, Sharikoff2814, Joshua C. Follier, Chad Bramwell, Incomplete Sentience, and Nicholas Patrick. Thank you.